Here we go, boo.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
You know, I am so grateful to be here this morning. I'm grateful to the lovely ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'm grateful for my family that is here.
Woo-hoo.
And I'm grateful to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. You know, it's been 30 years since I've had a Lima address. And I've actually lived more of my adult life in Dayton. In fact, I've lived more of my life in Dayton. But there's nothing like coming home.
All right.
Nothing like coming home. It's the place where people call me by my childhood nicknames and I automatically answer without hesitation. The place where people mistakenly call me by my sister's name and I still answer. Because I'm Angela, by the way, she's Tiffany. But it's because I'm home. You know, you can picture the largest tree in the forest. No matter how tall or how many branches, that tree's growth and strength is dependent on its roots. And I am here today because of my roots. So thank you, Lima. You know, without Lima and my memories growing up on Greeley Chapel Road, my summer spent at the Miss Paul or the Salvation Army Community Center, or those days at those Bradfield Center dances. How many of y'all went to those Bradfield Center dances? I know you was everybody telling me yes. Those Bradfield Center dances are my time spent acting with the MCM Drama Company. And especially my time, the day where I dedicated my life to Christ at the Philippian Missionary Baptist Church. I am grateful for my roots. And I am grateful to be standing here today, on this day, as we celebrate the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the man whose legacy was fighting for the rights of other people, who stood for justice and equality, who lived and died fighting for the dignity of others. We're celebrating his accomplishments and what he did in that pivotal era in American history known as the Civil Rights Movement. But today, on January 20th, 2025, we are at another era. Another pivotal moment in the history of America. Today, we must be reminded that the fight is not over. We are reminded that the battle has still yet to be won. We are reminded that we must be like Dr. King and be the change. You know, Dr. King famously said, the time is always right to do what is right. And now, Lima, more than ever, we must do what is right and demand the same of others.
All right.
So I challenge you to turn off MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN, and go be the change. Don't allow the narratives created by others to tell you what's important to you. Don't let them lull you into complacency or hopelessness and build up anger. I mean, it's okay to be angry, but use your anger to activate you and go be the change. And I don't expect you to put the whole world on your shoulders or run out and go march on Washington. Just look around here in your own community, in your schools, your churches, your places of work, and be the change. Find out what you personally are passionate about and be the change. Think about those things that you complain about, that you put on Facebook and you rant about. And don't just complain, but ask yourself, what can I do about it?
All right.
How can I be the change? Ask yourself, what organizations are already out here in my city and my community that I can join and I can join their fight? Because it's not always about starting from scratch. There are plenty of organizations that are out here doing the work. They just need more workers to do better work. So be collaborative when you're trying to be the change. You know, for instance, I finally decided to go back to in-person church. I was one of those people that got really comfortable in my pajamas watching online. Am I the only one? But when I finally decided to go back to church, I looked around and I'm like, and I'm there with my 14-year-old daughter, and I'm like, where are the teenagers? Prior to the pandemic, we had a whole line of kids marching off to kids' church every Sunday. But now they're teenagers, and where are they? My daughter would go to Sunday school, and there were only one or two other teenagers in the entire church. So she started to complain, and I was complaining with her, but I was like, you know what, wait a minute. I mean, I could have went on a Facebook rant past, and I could have been like, the church ain't doing nothing for the young people. Why the church ain't answering the call? I could have done that. But I went to my daughter. I said, Riley, let's be the change. And we didn't have to create something new. The infrastructure was already there. But we just decided to use our resources and our influence. And so, in the month of December, prior to that, we had about 2 teenagers in the church. The month of December, we averaged over 35 teenagers who got up in the morning. Yesterday, we had 40 at 9 a.m. on a Sunday because we decided to be the change. And your change may not be within the church. The change that you may need may be in your workplace. And it may be as simple as creating a bulletin board of African Americans who've done great things in your city. Because instead of complaining about it, Dion Dickey said, you know, my work isn't doing enough, so I'm going to be that change. And you know what she did? She created a bulletin board and highlighted African Americans in the city. So that anybody who walked into that city building saw some of the great accomplishments of people from Lima. It was just that simple for her to be the change. And you know, we have to be the change, and we have to celebrate the accomplishments of African Americans. It's important that we celebrate those accomplishments. And we have to boldly and loudly and unapologetically highlight the accomplishments of African Americans, because there are those in power right now who think that DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion means that black folks just sit back waiting for undeserved handouts. Because they don't know, or they choose to ignore the true history of this country. They don't know, or they choose to ignore that it was a black man who created the potato chip, a multi-billion-dollar industry. They don't know, or they choose to ignore that it was a black woman named Mary Van Britton Brown who created the home security system. They don't know, or they choose to ignore that it was a black surgeon by the name of Daniel Hale Williams who completed the first successful open heart surgery. They don't know, or they choose to ignore that the only reason you can hear me at the back of the room is because of a black scientist by the name of James West who invented the modern day microphone. All right. So we must celebrate our history, because we don't want them thinking that we're asking for undeserved handouts. We're demanding our place at the table because we deserve to be there. And in some instances, we're creating our own table, so stay out of the way.
Come on.
So be the change as we celebrate Black history, because it matters to the next generation. It matters so much so. How many of you have ever heard of Claudette Colvin? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Claudette Colvin. Yes. Claudette Colvin was a 15-year-old girl who refused to give up her seat on that bus. Yes. 9 months before Rosa Parks. A 15-year-old girl. That it was her arrest that inspired Dr. King and Rosa Parks, and we all know the rest of the story. Rosa Parks went on to become the mother of the civil rights movement. But let's rewind, Courtney.
All right.
That 15-year-old girl refused to get out of her seat on that bus that day. We know that part of the story now. But what you may not know is that week her school had been celebrating Negro History Week. Now we celebrate Black History Month. But back then, it was Negro History Week, and her teacher had taught her about W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington. So when she got on the bus that day, those white men were standing there. They were yelling in that 15-year-old girl's face, threatening her, yelling at her. But she said, it was like Harriet Tubman was sitting on one shoulder and Sojourner Truth was sitting on the other.
Come on.
And I couldn't get up.
Oh.
She was emboldened by the knowledge of her ancestors, their triumphs and their success. And that little girl refused to get up. So yes, Rosa Parks was the change. Claudette Colvin, that 15-year-old girl, she was a part of that change. And her teacher at Booker T. Washington High School gave her the knowledge that sparked that change. So we must be intentional about making sure that our young people know our history. Because there are lessons that we can learn from that story. One, you are never too young to be a part of that change. How many high schoolers or young people do we have in the room today? You are never too young to be a part of that change. Another lesson we have to learn is that knowing your history can inspire you to be that change. And adults, it is our responsibility to make sure that our young people know the history so they know they have the power to be that change. It is our responsibility. Because unfortunately, we can't rely on our school systems. We already know our schools are a battleground for history right now. And y'all, this is a subject that is so near and dear to my heart. Because I can barely remember what I had for lunch yesterday. But I very vividly remember being in the 8th grade at Perry Junior High, sitting in my social studies class with Mr. Hillskin. He was teaching about slavery, y'all, and he told us that black folks were better off not running because at least they had food and something and somewhere to stay. Y'all, he told us that they shouldn't run because at least they had shelter and food as slaves. But fortunately, I knew better. Because I had spent time at the Miss Paul Community Center. I had spent time at the Salvation Army in the Bradfield under the instruction of James Williamson and my mother, Mary Mumford. They taught us our history. So I remember when they said it was wrong, and I remember y'all raised my hand, and I almost got kicked out of class that day. Now, if I had known about Claudette Colvin back then, baby, they would probably have kicked me out the whole building. But unfortunately, I didn't know about Claudette Colvin, so I put my hand down after he yelled at me a little bit. And I say unfortunately because 2 years later, my brother Travis sat in that same class, with that same teacher, with that same topic, and he told their class that black people were better off not running. Unfortunately, he told them that. And again, we knew differently because we had the community centers, we had the adults in our lives that taught us differently. But what about the people that didn't have a James Williamson or a Mary Mumford? Like, what is it like to walk around living life with a seed implanted in you that says, as long as we're giving you a little something to eat, we're giving you somewhere to rest your head, your freedom doesn't matter. What does it feel like to walk around with the belief that as long as we give you a raggedy place to stay and a little piece of bread, that you shouldn't fight for freedom? So y'all, this thing is real. We must understand and teach our children our history because there are others who will be teaching them otherwise. So yes, we have to be the change. We have to be intentional, we have to be bold, we have to be knowledgeable, and we must be aware. Because everybody that's standing beside you, Pastor Mumford, ain't standing with you.
Amen.
I'm going to say that again because somebody might have missed that. Everyone that's standing beside you ain't necessarily standing with you. There are some that are standing there just to maybe catch a little spotlight, if there is some spotlight. There are some that are standing there because they're nosy. And there are some that will be standing there because because they want to disrupt. You have to know the difference. And you have to be focused. Be focused, and again, I'm going to say it, turn off MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. Because there's some producer trying to get ratings, and they're going to try to tell you what they think should be important to you. But remember what's important to you. Stay focused and be that change. But no matter how intentional, knowledgeable, focused, or bold that you are, there will become adversity. And in those moments, you must be resilient. Because Dr. King, he had to be resilient. I thought about it. We think, oh, he wrote the letters from Birmingham jail. Yeah, he was in jail.
Wow.
He was in jail. He faced adversity and he had to be resilient. He famously stated, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Because challenges are going to come. Controversy is going to come, but we have to be resilient. We have to stay in the fight and be the change. Be the change, like Lima native Violet T. Lewis, who founded an HBCU in 1928 in Detroit, Michigan. Yes, a Lima native founded a black college in Detroit, the Lewis College of Business. Be the change, like Joyce Garrett, who boldly broke the color barriers in Lima in 1953, when she became the first African-American teacher in Lima City schools. Yes. She was the change that paved the way for educators like Ms. Velma Casey. She was the change that paved the way for Principal Mr. Marshall. She was the change that paved the way for School Board Member Cheryl Allen, and now our Vice President of the school board, her son, Saul Allen. She was the change that paved the way. Be the change like Carl Williams, who was a prominent labor leader and activist in the city of Lima. He protested to help end segregation in our city swimming pools and lunch counters. He went on to become the city's first black city councilman. He was the change that paved the way for Councilman Jamie Dixon. He was the change that paved the way. Be the change. Like Miss Susie Williamson, who in 1991 loaded up a bunch of high schoolers in a van in the parking lot of Miss Hall Community Center and took us on a visit to Central State University. I was on that bus. That girl who had raised her hand in the 8th grade, that girl who had never had a black teacher at all in Perry schools. In fact, the only black adult we ever saw was the janitor. But Miss Susie, she decided to be the change in my life, and she put me on that van and took me to Central State, where I was offered a full academic scholarship. She was the change that paved the way for Londale Smith and Emmanuel Curtis and Angel Cowan, who are now doing the work to take children all over this state and empower them and show them their possibilities. Be the change, like our very own mayor. So yes, be the change. And lastly, as you work to be the change, be prayerful. Because God has not given you a spirit of fear. Come on. Be prayerful. Because he knows the plans he has for you.
Come on.
Dr. King once said, to be a Christian without prayer is no more possible than to be alive without breathing. So be prayerful, Lima. Because we are in a pivotal moment in history. Be prayerful and be resilient. Because the going might get tough. But be prayerful and know that we stand on some mighty, mighty shoulders. We stand on the shoulders of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Be prayerful, Lima. And be the change. Thank you.
Ooh. Woo!